Welcome to the Put on Waivers Media Group, home of the Put on Raiders podcast and the Student Body Right podcast. This is your place for the best breakdowns and the best insight for those who fight on and bleed silver and black. Now, here are your hosts, Dwayne Douglas and Ryan Holmes.
And welcome, everybody, to the glorious episode of the Put on Raiders podcast. I'm your host, Dwayne Douglas, along with Ryan Holmes, and we are podcasting off the beautiful shores of the Pacific Ocean. A little overcast out here in Southern Cal today, but how's the weather where you at right now?
Good. I'm up in the Bay Area. Sun's out, 70 degrees. For the first time all spring, I'm in good weather. It only took till April.
Yes. Sun's out, guns out. Make sure that you rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast, and then hit that alarm so we can always keep you abreast of when the new episodes are coming. All those good things like that. Thank you for joining us and watching the show. So draft, and more draft coming up for these Raiders and Ziegler, McDaniel. The on the job training continues for Ziegler, so we'll see if he's able to come through with that. Let's just start with the kind of the quarterback situations as well too. I mean, obviously we know Jimmy G is the quarterback for this season, not for maybe not for the foreseeable future. We know all that, but there's a lot of obviously in this time where we have we're a couple of weeks away from the draft. Nobody's going to give you anything, but as far as the quarterbacks go. I kind of wanted to pose this question to you about Will Levis because I was thinking about him the other day, and I earlier in the week I had Marcus Johnson on. I kind of want to give you the same question. Are we missing something with him as far as his play on the field? Changing offensive systems, all those things like that. Do you think that he would be somebody who, if they say that 7 he was available, or if they trade up to go get him, do you think that's somebody who the Raiders would really like to go after? When you look at Ziegler and McDaniel, I'm just kind of throwing it out there because sometimes with all the stuff that doesn't matter, like putting mayonnaise in coffee, which actually does matter because it's disgusting. But
that's true, though. I thought he came out and said
that it wasn't true. Oh, it wasn't mayonnaise. Oh, well, yeah. Well, you can't believe everything on the internet. But with all the you hear stuff people say like he's aloof, all the other stuff like that. But do you feel like that would be if they made that pick because we kind of want to see the Raiders make a quarterback pick here and make a definitive decision on the future of the quarterback position with the Raiders? Do you feel like that is something that I know a lot of fans won't be happy with it, but are we missing the fact that he does have talent, that he does have a big arm, that he could be a good quarterback in this Josh McDaniel system?
I would say this. I would say that he does fit a lot of prototypes for what NFL scouting departments are looking for. He's big, he's strong, he's mobile, he has a big arm. Mm-hmm. What it comes down to with him, and he passes the intangible test from everything we hear about. Really good, score on the Wonderlic or whatever the version of it, S2, whatever you call it now. So smart guy. There's leadership skills. The one concern I have from him is just he throws rocket shots. Like, can he layer the ball over a linebacker, get it down in front of a safety? Can he fit the ball in holes with touch, or is he just going to rip it in there at all times? But he does fit the Josh McDaniel system. He's a big physical guy. He's going to stay in the pocket for the most part. He's going to rip the ball in the middle of the field, kind of where Josh McDaniels wants to throw it. He wants to throw these deep intermediate routes, which is what Levis is good at. So I do see a fit within the offense. He's probably not going to make a ton of plays out of structure. He's not going to get out of the pocket and wow you with throws down the field. But I think this happens every draft. Everyone falls in love with one or two guys at the top, and then we write off all the other quarterbacks. But Josh Allen was the 4th quarterback taken in that draft.
Yeah.
I'm not saying he's Josh Allen. Patrick Mahomes wasn't the first quarterback taken in the draft. Like, I'm old enough to remember that Mitch Trubisky got drafted ahead of Deshaun Watson and
he did.
And Patrick Mahomes. So I'm not going to say Will Levis is not going to be a good player because he's not the number 1 or number 2 quarterback in this draft. I wouldn't trade up for him. If the Raiders wanted to make that move and he fell to 7, I could absolutely see it being a fit. I think Brian Hoyer signing means nothing as far as whether they're going to take a quarterback in the first round or not. He's in the building. He's veteran insurance in case the guy they want doesn't fall to them. But if they do get a guy in the first round, Brian Hoyer's there, he can help them learn the offense. He can get them through mini camp. He can play early in the season. If something happened to Jimmy G in training camp, at least you have Brian Hoyer to get you through a few weeks till Jimmy G came back. If it was a short-term injury before handing it over to the rookie. So I completely understand why Brian Hoyer was brought in. And I could also see Brian Hoyer getting released in training camp at cut down day because they didn't give him any guaranteed money. It's like $400,000, which is nothing. But no, I actually think Levis is a better fit within the offense than Anthony Richardson. I know a lot of people love Anthony Richardson because of the freak athlete. I'm not sure that he's going to play the style of quarterback that Josh McDaniels wants out of his quarterback, where I think Levis could. But I'm still crossing my fingers, and I'm hoping that if some way, somehow they figure out how to get their hands on Bryce Young or CJ Stroud.
Do you excuse me, do you worry about, like you talked about, like not making plays out of structure? Like on any, like you have to be so precise to not play out of structure, because the one offensive lineman gets beat, somebody runs the wrong route. I mean, the quarterback has to hold the ball a little bit longer. The next thing you know, your perfectly planned play becomes a play that you have to run out of structure. Does that worry you about this offense that Josh McDaniel is trying to implement with the Raiders? Because with the way pass rush is, the way people blitz nowadays, I mean, any play can get blown up pretty quickly. And you do have number 10 can play, like Jimmy G can play, but he is on the fragile side as far as that goes.
No, I think what I mean is out of structure is Will Levis isn't a guy that's going to get outside the pocket and just start making these wow throws down the field by time. When he gets that, he's physical, he's strong, he can move. He's going to get away from guys. He's going to break tackles, but it's going to be more of, a power run type guy. When he gets outside, he might run the ball and get you 5-7 yards and get out of bounds. He's not going to make anyone miss. He's not Lamar Jackson. He's not going to break off 40, 50-yard runs, but he can get outside the pocket and pick up first downs with his legs. He's not going to get outside the pocket and start throwing the ball all over the field and buy time for guys to get open. So when he gets outside of the pocket, it's more to run and get 5, 7, 10 yards than it is to make explosive plays down the field. I don't know how coachable it is. Like, I don't think that's more instinctual. I don't think guys get a lot better at that once they get into the league and play a lot. I think they can get slightly better at it, but I don't think those guys are ever going to be huge threats throwing the ball down the field. He's not Patrick Mahomes. He's not going to be doing no-look passes on the run back across his body. He could set his feet and then, get the ball down the field vertically, a la Josh Allen. I see some Jake. I know they don't want to hear this name, but
I hear it coming.
What was the guy that the Titans took out of Washington? Was it Jake Hooker?
Jake Locker?
Locker. Yeah, I see a lot of a Locker a little bit, but I mean, Levis is a guy that could be, if everything goes right, like borderline top 10 quarterback, 10 to 15, like kind of good enough. I don't think he's ever going to be great, but he's a guy that you can win with, which is tough to say because you moved on from a guy that was very similar as far as where he ranks, 10 to 15 in the league. I don't see top 5, top 6 ability out of Levis, but he's not going to be one of the worst quarterbacks in the league. I just think you have to go back and look at his tape in 2021 when he had NFL players on that roster.
Yeah.
And last year he was battling injuries, but everyone says wait till next year. I looked at the quarterbacks for next year. I kind of glanced at a top 10 list. There's like 2. I don't like the other 8. So it's like, it's not like there's 7 quarterbacks in next year's draft. So like,
it's Maine Williams.
You got to get one at some point. Yeah, the third guy in the list was Hartman, who transferred from Wake Forest, I think Notre Dame. He's not a starting quarterback in the NFL. He's not a top 10 type guy. So if the Raiders want to get a guy and have someone, I think they're going to have a chance to take Levis. But I've seen mock drafts of him, teams trading up to 2, and I've seen him going in the teens, and I've seen him going in the second round. So I think teams are all over the board. It's going to be really interesting to see what happens from 3 to 6 in the draft, because there's a real chance that Richardson and Levis don't go 3 to 6, and defensive guys can report. And then if those guys get past the Raiders and Falcons, like the Titans, and then you're going to start to see one of those guys is going to fall. One of those 4 guys probably ends up in the teens.
If you had to Ray, and it's the last thing on Levis, and I'll move on to another quarterback. But if we're sitting here, and this is if you go back in time and say what you thought about Mac Jones and Levis, would you say Levis is a a better prospect, or would you say Mac Jones is a better prospect? Because I don't know. Maybe I might go Levis. I'm not sure. I mean, I'm not. I mean, but then again, I don't want to. Like, I hate the fact that Mac Jones has tape of him being with probably one of the most unprofessional offensive coordinators in history last year.
I was never a Mac Jones guy. I would take Levis over Jones just because of the physical tools. He's a better runner. He's a more physical runner. He's got a better arm. When you just start looking at the skill set, Levis has a better skill set than Mac Jones. Mac Jones is cerebral. I hate to use that word because he's a white quarterback, but like smart guy. He's going to read the defense. He's going to get the ball to the right guy. It's not a big arm. He's not fast. He's not elusive.
Yeah.
Whereas Levis can do a little bit of that stuff better. And then I just think arm talent wise, Levis has a better arm.
Yeah.
He's going to make more plays down the field.
No question about it.
Than Mac Jones.
Let's see here. So CJ Stroud. So this one, another Michael Lombardi gem. He dropped today, and I'm not sure. Listen, he's more plugged in than other people, but that CJ Stroud might be a guy who is uncoachable. So part of me is like, hey, if y'all want to keep saying he's uncoachable, and we all know his son is the offensive coordinator, have him drop to 3, and we'll find out how uncoachable he really is. because I would love to see the Raiders trade up and grab him as a prospect. Do you wonder? I mean, did you worry about I don't know. Is it people get caught up in the Ohio State thing? Like, okay, it's a Ohio State quarterback, and also in his offense, he's looking to the sidelines a lot. Something that you don't do in the NFL. But as far as just pure thrower, dropping back and just being and letting it rip, I do like CJ Stroud. Question is, did you have the same thoughts about the CJ Stroud you had before Georgia, and then did it change after the Georgia game?
Well, first of all, props to hopefully Mick Lombardi for having Mike Lombardi say that.
Yes, please. That'd be great. That'd be great.
We're going to hear things for the next 2 weeks. We're going to hear things about every one of these prospects that may or may not be true.
That'd be true.
Stroud's probably the best fit for the McDaniels offense in this draft. He's a big guy. He's a pocket passer. There is some elusiveness. Good arm strength. Good in the middle of the field. Can drive the ball outside when he needs to. So I would love for him to fall to 3. The one question with him was like, can he make plays outside the pocket? What kind of runner is he? Can he add that element? And he showed that in the Georgia game. Now, again, he's similar to Levis in that he's not going to break off 30, 40-yard runs. He's not going to hurdle guys. He's not going to juke guys in the open field, but he's going to get yards when he needs to. He didn't really have to do that at Ohio State because he had those big tackles out there and he wasn't under a ton of pressure. So we'll see. We'll see how he handles pressure. I guess that would be my number one concern here because he didn't face a lot of it, and when he did, it wasn't great. But I would do a cartwheel right now if the Raiders found a way to get CJ Stroud as the quarterback of the future for their team. There is some talk that Bryce Young is kind of pulled ahead in Carolina according to the odds makers. If you follow Vegas, Bryce Young is now the favorite to go number 1. There is chatter that the Texans would not take CJ Stroud, which means they're a partner now if the Raiders want to go up to 2 and potentially go up to 3 if the Texans, because the Texans also pick 12. Let's say the Texans like Richardson or Levis, they could take the best defender. They could take Will Anderson if they like him at 2 and straight up from 12 because they have 12 picks in this draft as well and get into the 7 or 8 range and get into striking distance to take one of those quarterbacks that falls. So they're in a position where they can look at it and say, we can get the best defensive player in this draft. If the quarterback we want is not there at 2, and we could still get one of these other guys. Or we could trade down and get Hendon Hooker maybe later in the first round or the top of the second round. So the Texans are a sneaky player to trade out at number 2, I think, if Bryce Young goes 1.
I totally agree with that part of it. And I think, DeMeco Ryans, I think it depends on how far Shanahan is he. Does he feel like, okay, if I implement this offense and just build up the defense and I can just, do all the stuff that, they do in the Shanahan offense, I could be good to go offensively. And then do I need a superstar there? My defense can be the settling force. out there in Houston. That could be an issue there. So it could be something there, and he probably wants. I can guarantee you he wants that. He's had come from a place where he has big time pass rushers. Nick Bosa. I mean, off defensive line. He must be salivating at the top of this draft for one of those guys, right?
He's a defensive coach. He wants a defensive player. I bet if you asked him in a private moment, one-on-one, would he rather take the second quarterback or the best defender? He's going to take the defender. That's what he does. That's what he coaches. He's been on teams that haven't had elite quarterbacks and had success. Can he get that same player at 12? No, he's not going to get a pass rusher as good as Will Anderson at 12, but he can get him at 2 if he really wants him. The Texans have a bad defense.
Yes.
But they have started to get pieces. He has Petrie. He has Stingley. They took those 2 guys last year. They don't really have a pass rush. So it's going to be hard for them, I think, to take a quarterback that they don't love over the best defensive player in the draft. That's going to be what they're going to wrestle with in the draft room.
Yeah, no question about it. I think, especially, and you're going to find out who do they love Bryce or do they love CJ Stroud? But I think we're in for a little bit of a surprise there at number 2. But we'll see as far as that goes. Bryce Young.
I would add that's going to be an ownership decision. Whether DeMeco Ryans wants to take a defender or not, it's going to be up to the owner. The owner is going to take who he wants.
Yeah, well,
when you pick that high in the draft.
That's part of the draft because the idea is to not be there again. So in the next 10 years. So we'll have to see. Yeah, that's gonna be true. That's gonna be. I mean, he can stomp his foot and say,
or they take the defender and then they suck next year and get Caleb Williams. Because if you want to talk about tanking to get a top 2 pick, they have the roster to do it.
Yes, because even if they have a tremendous draft, this is going to be a bottom. This is going to be one of the
5-win team.
Yeah. This is not going to be a great team by any stretch of imagination. Talked about Stroud, talked about Levis, Anthony Richardson, Nugget from Lombardi said that. But I think he said last week that it would be after watching his tape, he cannot be drafted in top 15. Which is, I mean, he can, but I understand the point to a certain extent. I do think, I mean, he can go from, obviously he has one of the highest ceilings. He can go in the top 5. He can go, in the teens. What are your thoughts about Anthony Richardson? Who knows? I mean, maybe he'll never be a over a 67, 70% completion guy. But he could still be a big play threat and a guy who makes plays in the National Football League.
I think it comes down to the system you put him in because he's not going to be able to run every system. He'd be great in like a Shanahan system where it's a lot of bootlegs, get outside the pocket, get on the run, a lot of vertical throws. If you ask this guy to sit in the pocket and just read defenses and go through progressions and make accurate throws in the short to intermediate area, that's where he's not going to have a lot of success. He's going to make a lot of wild plays and he's going to have a lot of head scratching plays, especially early in his career. If a team takes him, the front office, the general manager, and the head coach have to have a lot of job security to be able to take him and develop him because he's not ready to play. He needs to play. He needs reps, but he's not ready to play against NFL defenses day one. He's going to get by in athletic ability, getting outside the pocket, breaking off huge runs, but he's not going to sit back there and go 25 to 30 for 320 yards with four touchdowns, every 3 or 4 weeks. He's going to have games where he throws for 100 yards with like a 30-40% completion rate because right now he's missing the layups. Like he's having a hard time completing the shots. He has to stay in down and distance in the NFL. He can't be playing at 2nd and 12, 3rd and 8, 3rd and 12, because he's going to get eaten up with blitzes. He has to be able to take the 1st and 5, the 1st and 10 check down, get to 2nd and 5, and stay ahead of the chains. He's just not going to do that as a rookie. I don't see that from him. I see some games where he's going to be really good and games where he's going to have a lot of struggles. So, athletically, he's a freak, but as you mentioned, like you got to go back to the tape and watch the tape and figure out why did he not complete more than 53% of his passes? Because there were explanations with Josh Allen, bad competition, Wyoming, like didn't have NFL players around him. This guy's playing at Florida. He's got NFL talent on that roster with him, and still struggled. Having said that, I could see the Raiders being interested here but Josh McDaniels is going to have flexibility in how he calls an offense and what he's looking for and willing to get from that position, because Richardson doesn't offer what McDaniels has typically had other than that short run with Cam Newton. I just don't see Josh McDaniels as the type of coach that wants to call a game that's going to accentuate the strengths of a quarterback like Anthony Richardson. I just don't see that as a match.
Yeah. No. Well, I mean, I can't. I don't see this as a match. I don't see this as a match at all. As well, I could see. I mean, a heavy run team where he can use play action, those things like that. That would be cool. And obviously use his ability to get to the edge because he's a powerful runner. I mean, you see some runs where he's just carrying people. So you see that.
I think Atlanta would be a good spot with Arthur Smith based on the type of offense they ran in Tennessee. Baltimore, of course, they could keep the same offense they basically have with Lamar Jackson, but maybe Indianapolis if they want to bring over the offense that Jalen Hurts ran last year in Philadelphia with their new coach. But like there's only a few systems that you're going to put this guy in early and he's going to have success. Yeah. In most offenses, it's going to take him a while to pick it up.
Yeah. Bryce Young, obviously he's been his whole life, obviously his whole adult life playing football, he's been that size. So it's some people. I mean, he's not going to get any taller. I mean, he can play the song "I Wish" all he wants. He's not going to get any taller.
So reference, I like it.
Yes, you gotta love it. But he's not going to. So with that being said, I know he played in the SEC, but is it? And if he was 6'4", I think he would be the number one pick. No question about it. Can he be successful? I mean, in the NFL, playing with that slight of a frame. I mean, I think that's the only question people have about him. I mean, the leadership stuff. I mean, the game-winning drives against Texas was phenomenal. Some of his throws. I mean, his pocket presence is really good. He can make a lot of the plays, all the plays you want to see him make. He's kind of played in a version of this offense for the Raiders as well too in college. So, what are your thoughts about Bryce Young? Can he? I mean, obviously it depends on where he goes, but do you feel like he can make things happen here on the NFL level with being that small?
Yeah, I'm on the Bryce Young as QB1 in this draft. He's the guy that I would take if I had the opportunity to do it. But there are some caveats to that. He's slender. He's small. Mm-hmm. Can he get through it? Durability is the question. Can that frame get through 17, 20 games? Because the goal is to win a Super Bowl. It's not to get through 17 games. You're trying to get through 20. And can he take the punishment? I think in today's NFL where you're not allowed, you can't really breathe on the quarterback. You'll get flagged. Guys aren't taking the shots they were taking in the 70s, 80s, even 90s anymore. So I think physically he can. He is going to get dinged up. You're going to have a good backup. Like there's going to be years where he probably misses, 6, 7 games due to an injury. It's hard to say long term. Is he going to have any season injuries like an ACL or a rotator cuff, anything like that? You can't predict those, but he's going to have some nicks and bruises. He's going to get dinged up, but he has that ick factor. He's like a point guard out there. Like, he can get rid of the ball. He's magic in the pocket. He can get out. He's going to get outside the pocket. He's not looking to run. He's looking to throw the ball down the field and make explosive plays. Can he see over the lineman? That's going to be a question. Like he's going to have to find those pockets to get the ball out, kind of like Drew Brees, Russell Wilson, those kind of guys. The track record here, there's not a lot of guys that size that have had a ton of success, but not a lot have played in this era where it's kind of like basketball on grass at times. So if this was 1985, I'd say no way. The teams wouldn't even draft this guy. There's a prototype within the scouting departments where they're looking for certain physical traits. He's not going to pass those tests. So you're going to have kind of a newer age front office that's going to look past that. Some of the old school teams that still do it, height, weight, speed, like they're not going to consider Bryce Young. I think he's special. I think he's a playmaker back there. You're going to have a good offensive line. You don't want this guy to get hit. You're going to have a running game. But I think, like as you mentioned, like when the game's on the line, out of all these guys, I want him to be the quarterback. I want him to have the ball in the fourth quarter and the 2 minutes with the game on the line. Mm-hmm. And I think that separates him from the rest of these guys. I have questions about the other 3 guys when in those situations when that happens. I have no questions with Bryce Young has the ball with the game on the line.